Right, in this video I'm going to talk to you about how to solve the skyrocketing rent situation in California. And no, we're going to talk later about rent control, but that's not really the solution. The actual solution is incentivizing low rents. So you just need to think about this from the landlord standpoint. How would it be more beneficial for me to charge less rent? Instead of fighting a battle with them trying to do it, it's much easier to incentivize them. So now, housing and urban development has data, just like they do for FHA loans, on how much real estate costs an area. So they have data for rental prices in demographic areas. For instance, in Riverside, they know the average rent for a one-bedroom is X amount of dollars. In Fontana, they know that the average rent is X amount of dollars for. So let's just use a one-bedroom apartment, for example. And let's just say the rent is $1,500 for convenience sake. And let's say that the FHA data shows that $1,500 a month for that general demographic area is the actual rent average. So if you're a landlord and you charge 30% less than that number, then you get a tax break. You could also play it on the other side and say if you're a landlord and you charge 30% more than that number, then you pay additional taxes. This would incentivize landlords to do the right thing, which is charge less rent. So it becomes more advantageous to be a good landlord because they have a lot of good and bad landlords. There's a lot of landlords that charge the highest amount of rent that they can get, and that's just the way they run their business. And we don't want to incentivize them. We want to give incentives to the ones that are doing the right thing, right? So you come up with an amount. I'm just saying 30% for just a baseline to figure it out from. It could change every year. It could change every 6 months. You could have it change all the time based on how much less than they are the average rent. And as rents went down, you'd probably have to change it. Now you could do the opposite as well. You could do, so the problem, I'll tell you about the problems with rent control a little bit later. But again, you could go towards the top end and you could say, okay, if you're charging 30% more than the average rent, then you have to pay additional tax. So what this would do is this would drive down rent prices pretty quickly. At the same time, we would need to incentivize builders to build more homes and buildings. Because one of the problems is we do have a shortage. And the reason we have a shortage is because the government that we have they want to penalize builders for building homes. And I've talked about that in other videos, but I'll talk about it again in another one coming up soon. I'll give you a couple of the reasons. They have a lumber board foot tax you may not be aware of. If you go to buy lumber, they have an additional tax on that just came up in the last 10 years. They have paint recycle fees, makes the building price go up. We have the highest mandates and taxes on land development. Did you guys know that every new home needs to have fire sprinklers in California? I really don't know why. Other states that even have worse fire danger than us don't even have fire sprinklers. It was actually something the insurance companies did to try and make things a little more profitable for them. Lobby Congress. Get your deal done. Give them some money for their campaign. That's how it's happening. So this is the reason why some of those housing prices and housing are not getting built. They're building it in other states because it's more profitable for builders to build there. If you make it profitable for builders to build here instead of fighting against them, then you're more apt to have more building get done. That's what needs to happen in California as well. At the same time, these incentives are put out. You increase the supply enough, eventually there's less demand, pricing comes down, you can get rid of the incentives. So now I'll explain to you why rent control does not work. With rent control, you are not incentivizing people for doing the right thing. The landlords who are charging less rent get penalized. So that is the wrong way to do things. As an example, a guy who charges really low rent because he cares about his tenants, if he has to have a roof done on his building and he has to raise rents, he may not be able to raise them enough to cover the expense. But yet the guy who always charges the highest amount for rent and always raises the rent can keep doing business. So what happens is rents end up going up. What happens is the landlords end up having to give, when they get new tenants, they charge the new tenants a much higher premium on rent because they know they can only raise it so much a year. And they will raise rent every year on your home or your apartment with rent control. So if you can see, that's how rent control works adversely for the population, and it's not a good idea. It's ruined New York. I mean, what happens is eventually those properties that they charge lower rents is they end up getting run down, and then what happens is because landlords can't raise the rent that they need to do the repairs, and somebody comes in and buys out the building and then kicks all the tenants out. So you have all the tenants on the streets, and then what happens is they gentrify the whole building, and then they charge a really high premium for rent, and one of those new landlords that does the wrong thing comes in, buys the building, and charges the heck out of everybody for rent. So if that's what you want, that's what you vote for, you guys. If you want rent control, that's what's going to happen. So anyway, that's a little bit about how to solve the rental problem. I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. See your comments, and make sure you make some.